Good evening, and congratulations to Mr. Glenn Youngkin, who is the newly elected governor of Virginia. And also, happy one-year anniversary to the most secure election in American history. It's hard to believe that a full year has gone by since this photo was taken. Regardless, though, we have a lot to discuss today. And to start with, according to secretly recorded audio tapes of hospital employees over in the state of Arizona, it appears to show that hospitals across the entire state are conducting COVID protocols in lockstep with one another, including isolating patients longer than is recommended by the CDC, denying them permission to see either their attorneys or their family members, as well as denying them nourishment as well as hydration. Meanwhile, 5 days ago, a federal judge ruled that the Biden administration cannot terminate either federal employees or military personnel who are in the process of applying for religious exemptions to the vaccine. And then likewise, over in the state of Illinois, 2 days ago, a judge there ruled that a hospital, a private hospital, cannot place their unvaccinated employees who have already gained religious exemptions on unpaid leave, meaning that they must continue to pay them. And then lastly, over in Minnesota, a local school board there has taken, let's say, a different approach to fighting back against parental criticism. And they did this by issuing a bevy of new rules, including forcing parents to publicly state their full name and their full home address if they wish to speak. Let's go through it all together. This is your daily Facts Matter update, and I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. And now let's begin today's discussion by talking a bit about how COVID patients are being treated. So 6 days ago, an organization called Truth for Health Foundation, they held an online press conference where several lawyers, several medical doctors, as well as family members of patients who are in the hospital for COVID, they described the kinds of conditions that they experienced, and along with their allegations, they actually provided secretly shot recordings of hospital staff members. Now, to start with, Truth for Health Foundation is a nonprofit charity foundation with their mission being, according to their website, to provide truthful, balanced, medically sound, research-based information and cutting-edge updates on prevention and treatment of common medical conditions, including COVID-19 and other infectious diseases that affect health, quality of life, and longevity. And so during this press conference that they held just 6 days ago, the president of this foundation, Dr. Elizabeth Villiet, who is also the host of this conference, she said this about the treatment that COVID patients received at hospitals. Prisoners in America's jails do have more rights right now than COVID patients in America's hospitals. It's unheard of. Now, that is obviously a very, very bold statement, but what exactly is she referring to? Well, the presenters at this online conference, they alleged that hospital patients who were suffering from COVID, they were denied intravenous fluids, they were denied permission to see their attorneys or their family members, and the presenters alleged that the patients had the drug remdesivir imposed upon them despite the risks of kidney and liver damage. Now, to start with, one of the presenters was Miss Allie Schultz, who is the legal director of an organization called America's Frontline Doctors. And not only did her mother-in-law sadly die from COVID, but she also alleges that her father-in-law suffered severe harm as a COVID patient over at the Mayo Clinic in Arizona. Specifically, she said that despite her medical power of attorney, she was prevented from learning basic information about the status of her father-in-law while he was at the hospital. Here's what she said. "I tried everything. I wrote every letter possible. I sent every email possible to advocate for them. I was literally carried out in handcuffs under color of law. I was assaulted under color of law. I was deprived access to their health records. I was deprived access to them, and I was lied to. But that's absolutely nothing compared to what happened to my father-in-law." And then in regards to what actually happened to him, she added that the Mayo Clinic kept her father-in-law away from any hydration or any nourishment over the course of 6 days, except for one bag of D5 water, which is dextrose 5% water. She further alleged that the hospital secluded her father-in-law for over 3 weeks more than either the Arizona Department of Health or the CDC recommended. And to prove her allegations, she actually secretly recorded staff members at this hospital as she was talking to them. And by the way, just as an aside, in Arizona, it's actually a one-party consent state for these types of secret recordings, meaning that they are legal as long as one of the two people knows that they're being recorded. And so in this case, these secret recordings are in fact legal. And so in the first recording that she presented at this conference, someone who identified himself as a hospital administrator, he said that the choice to deprive her father-in-law of food and water was the standard of care in the Phoenix metropolitan area due to concerns about aspiration of objects into his lungs. Take a listen.
The nutrition approach that they take when someone is admitted, having that many problems with breathing, is exactly what they do. And actually, you would find that to be the case in in all hospitals in the Valley. That is the standard of care because of the aspiration risk or the et cetera, right, with those patients who are in that circumstance.
The standard of care is to have a nutrition department do it, be aligned with the patient at least within the first day or two of being there. And then, yes, of course, we don't want him to aspirate, but maybe he could get some IV hydration, something at all. Or, I don't know, just an assessment. So, I'm sorry, it's not your fault, but like this is happening in your hospital. And I don't understand how, like that, it is not the standard of care to not provide any hydration or nourishment to a patient for 6 days, except for one bag of D5 water.
In another one of these secret recordings that she presented, a hospital staff member says that the hospital will not allow any visitations as long as he is there. Take a listen.
As far as visitation in our hospital, we are not going to allow you to visit him in our hospital as long as he is here.
And then a third recording that she presented made reference to meetings in which hospital executives made the conclusion that patients who tested positive for COVID would not be permitted to receive visitors. Take a listen.
What I do know is that there's at all of the hospitals, because I meet with all of the other chief medical officers in the hospital 3 times a week, and there is no visitation for patients who test positive in any of the hospitals.
And so, taken in their totality, these audio recordings show that her father-in-law was kept away from food and water, was kept in isolation, and he was not even allowed visitation, even by the person who holds medical power of attorney. Here's how Ms. Schultz described the situation. It is in the patient Bill of Rights. Just because they're using the word isolation doesn't mean it makes it any better what they're doing. When an American is isolated from others, what is that considered? Unlawful imprisonment. Furthermore, according to what was said in those secret recordings, it appears that this might not only be an anomaly at this one hospital. Here's what Ms. Schultz, who by the way again is the legal director at America's Frontline Doctors, here's what she added on this front.
In order to seclude and restrain patients, there is actually very, very strict guidelines for healthcare workers. And it cannot be a blanket order. There needs to be a new order every 24 hours. And if it goes past a few days, they need a judge to sign a court order. They cannot just blanket seclude someone for this long. And they also cannot conspire to make sure every hospital around them is doing the same thing.
Ms. Schultz then held up a document that she identified as a police report on the Mayo Clinic, which she said included felony charges of vulnerable adult abuse. She also highlighted a template for private criminal complaints that individuals who find themselves in a similar situation to the one she found herself in can file over the internet with their state's attorney general. She said that that template can actually be accessed via the Truth for Health Foundation's website, and I will actually throw a link to it. It'll be down in the description box below in case you need access to it for yourself. Now, Dr. Elizabeth Villiers, who is again the president of the foundation that's hosting this conference, she concluded by reminding Americans that they do not give up their constitutional rights once they are inside the 4 walls of a hospital. Here's what she said. You have the right to refuse treatment. You have the right to request treatment. You have the right to have an advocate when you are in the hospital. When those rights are denied, your civil rights, human rights, and constitutional rights are being overridden, and you will need an advocate. Now, we here at the Epoch Times, we did reach out to the Mayo Clinic for comment about the allegations found on those secret recordings. However, we have yet to hear back. Regardless, if you'd like to learn more about what was said in this conference, including, frankly, many things that I wouldn't even dare to discuss here on YouTube, I'll throw a link to the full-length video. It'll be in the description box below this video for you to check out. And all I ask in return is that you take a quick moment while you're making your way down there to the description box to take a small detour and smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. And now, before we move on over and discuss the restraining order that a federal judge placed on the Biden administration, I would like to take a quick moment and introduce our sponsor for today's episode, and I will do so from the sound booth. That's right, Roman. The sponsor of today's episode is an awesome company called American Hartford Gold. As I'm sure you're aware, the rate of inflation right now in this country is accelerating like crazy. I mean, everything from the cost of lumber, cars, houses, food, gas, everything is increasing at an accelerated pace. However, in my opinion, what the most amazing aspect of the system is that you can take this money, which I actually think is as fake as monopoly money because the Fed and the Treasury just print this out of nothing, and you can use it to buy real money from American Hartford Gold, which is gold and silver coinage. Take a look. This is a box that I get every single month from American Hartford Gold sent to me because I believe it's a great hedge against inflation. This is something that has had value for 5,000 years. It's had value across the world in Russia, China, America, India. I mean, this is the real stuff right here. This is a beautiful, actually Canadian maple. And this is right here is some silver coinage. I don't know if you can see how shiny and beautiful it is. Yeah, but I just get these every single month because I believe that unfortunately the US dollar will eventually fall as the global reserve currency, as sad as that is. And I just want to hedge against those people in Washington, D.C. continuously printing our prosperity into oblivion. And I would highly recommend that you do the same. Go on over to the website for American Hartford Gold and consider doing business with them. They're an awesome company. They sponsor a program like ours, so they obviously care about the truth getting out there, but they also have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They have a great customer support staff when you call them. They're super friendly, and they make the entire process super simple. Because not only can you get these packages here delivered directly to your doorstep, but you can call them up and set it up so that you can actually get gold and silver directly deposited into your IRA account, again, making it all super simple. And right now they're offering a special to viewers of Facts Matter, where depending on how much you buy, how much gold and silver you buy, they will throw in $1,500 worth of free silver on your first order. So give them a call at 866-242-2352 or text Roman to 65532. Also, I'll throw a link to their website down in the description box below. And American Hartford Gold, thank you so much for sponsoring this episode. Now, Roman in the studio, back to you. And now let's talk about the vaccine mandate on federal employees. And to start with, imagine for a moment that you work at a federal agency, which is now under a vaccine mandate from the Biden administration, meaning that everyone must get vaccinated. However, they do offer the opportunity for you to apply for a religious exemption. And so you apply for that religious exemption only to be told that while they consider your application, you will be put on unpaid leave for an indefinite amount of time, which will obviously put a lot of pressure on both you and your family. That's a true situation that was playing out across this country. And so a total of 20 plaintiffs filed a lawsuit against Joe Biden, as well as members of his administration, over their executive orders mandating vaccines for federal employees. Here's a statement from these plaintiffs' lawyer. The Biden administration has shown an unprecedented, cavalier attitude toward the rule of law and an utter ineptitude at basic constitutional contours. This combination is dangerous to American liberty. And so, after a bit of legal back and forth, 5 days ago, a federal judge issued a temporary restraining order, as well as a preliminary injunction, which prohibits the Biden administration from firing both unvaccinated civilians as well as unvaccinated active duty military personnel while their religious exemption applications are pending. Here's what the federal judge, who by the way is named Miss Colleen Collar-Cotterly, she's an appointee of Bill Clinton, and here's what she wrote as a part of her order. None of the civilian employee plaintiffs will be subject to discipline while his or her request for a religious exemption is pending. Active duty military plaintiffs, whose religious exception requests have been denied, will not be disciplined or separated during the pendency of their appeals. She further agreed with the plaintiffs and said that their employer's refusal to allow a religious exemption to the mandate would result in irreparable harm. Now, the lawyer for the plaintiffs, he understandably welcomed this judge's order. Here's what he said in a statement to Fox News. Thankfully, our Constitution protects and secures the right to remain free from religious persecution and coercion. With this order, we are one step closer to putting the Biden administration back in its place by limiting government to its enumerated powers. It's time citizens and courts said no to tyranny. The Constitution does not need to be rewritten, it needs to be reread. And so now, with this restraining order in place, federal employees, as well as service members, they can now file for religious exemptions without having to be put on unpaid leave while their applications are being reviewed. If you'd like to read more about this particular case, including the full text of that court order, I'll throw all that into the description box below this video for you to check out. And again, all I ask in return is that if you haven't already, take a quick moment to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. However, while we're on the topic of religious exemptions, let's move on over to Illinois. So the lawsuit that we just discussed a moment ago, the one against the Biden administration, well, that was specifically aimed at the federal government's treatment of federal employees. However, we are seeing a similar situation play out in the private sector as well. And as an example of that, we have the North Shore University Health System, which is located near Chicago. And a few weeks ago, in late October, 14 of their employees, they filed a legal complaint against this hospital, alleging that workers who obtained religious exemptions to the vaccine mandate were being put on unpaid leave. Let me just repeat that. The employees at this hospital system who already obtained religious exemptions, they were being placed effectively on unpaid leave. And in their lawsuit, the workers argued that this hospital policy was effectively discriminating against them since it was forcing them to decide between the vaccine and their jobs. Now, these employees are being represented by the Liberty Council, which is a nonprofit focused on defending religious freedom, and this is how they described the situation. North Shore had already started purging those employees with sincere religious objections to its mandatory COVID-19 vaccination policy and removed many employees with religious exemptions from its November work schedule. That included staff members with appeals that were pending, meaning that whether your religious exemption application was approved or it's still pending, you were effectively put on unpaid leave. Furthermore, in regards to the larger issues at play in this lawsuit, here's part of a statement that Liberty Counsel emailed to us here at the Epoch Times. Plaintiffs have shared these religious beliefs and others with North Shore and have asked North Shore for exemption and reasonable accommodation for these beliefs, but North Shore has unlawfully and callously refused. However, just like in the other case that we discussed earlier, the one against Joe Biden, the judge in this case, he likewise agreed with the plaintiffs as well. And so, 5 days ago, the U.S. District Judge who is in charge of this case, he issued a temporary restraining order against the hospital system, saying that they cannot put these employees on unpaid leave. Here's specifically what this judge, who by the way is named John Ness, he's an appointee of President Trump, here's what he said in his order. They can't be fired and they can't be placed on what is effectively, in my mind, unpaid leave. He further added that the hospital can take mitigating steps to accommodate these workers, but they must keep paying them. Here's what he said. North Shore is going to have to keep paying them. If you wish to require them to show up to work and use personal protective equipment and go through testing because you need the help and you don't want to pay them to be off-site, that's up to the hospital. Now, we here at the Epoch Times, we did reach out to this hospital system for comment on this development, but we have yet to hear back. Although, on a previous occasion, here's what the hospital told us here at the Epoch Times. We understand that getting vaccinated may be a difficult decision for some of our team members, and we value their committed service and respect their beliefs. We must prioritize the safety of our patients and team members in support of our broader mission. And now, according to this court order, not only must they respect their beliefs, but they must also pay them. If you'd like to read more about the particulars of this case out in Illinois, I'll throw the link to the article into the description box below this video, which is again that same little description box right below that like button that I hope you've already smashed. And now let's move on over to Minnesota, where just like over in Virginia, the school board there is having some contentious meetings where parents are pushing back against the curriculum that their children are being taught. However, and at least one of these Minnesota school boards, well, they have found a way to keep the parents from criticizing them. And that method is to force the parents to publicly state their full name and their full home address in order to speak. Let me just repeat that. The Mankato Area Public School Board, which is located in the southern part of Minnesota, they have implemented a new rule which forces both parents as well as members of the community who wish to speak at the school board meetings to publicly state their name and their address before they can get their 3 minutes. In a video of the first school board meeting over on October 18th, where this rule was actually implemented, here's what the chairwoman of the school board told the audience.
I want to remind everyone this is a business meeting of the school board. It is not a meeting that belongs to the public.
And then after saying that, she then proceeded to list out several new rules. And so, besides having to state your full name and address as a prerequisite to speak, these new rules also include a ban on calling out or addressing any individual school board member or any specific school district staff member like a teacher. She said that if you call out anyone during your speech, then the open forum will be closed, and the violator who did it will not be able to participate in future open forums. Then thirdly, starting in November, she said that parents will only be limited to speak about the items on the school board's agenda. And then lastly, the fourth rule, she said this.
Crowd noise or any sort of grandstanding during open forum, including applause, talking, hollering, or any outbursts will result in open forum being closed.
And so, to sum up, if you are a parent in this particular Minnesota school district and you would like to speak at a school board meeting, then you have to reveal where you live. You can't speak about any specific teacher or about any specific school employee. You can't grandstand. You can't talk about anything that's not on the school board's agenda. And then lastly, if the crowd behind you starts to applaud at something that you said, well, then your time is up. Now, in regards to whether this is actually legal or not, well, thus far, that is not exactly clear, given the fact that this rule is so new. It was only revealed about a week and a half ago. However, I have read many comments online regarding this particular case, and people have pointed out that these rules, if they apply, they should apply both ways, meaning that if the parents have to reveal their home addresses, then the school board members should be forced to as well. Regardless, we here at the Epoch Times, we did reach out to the school board for comment on this matter, but we have yet to hear back. If you'd like to read the full article regarding these new rules, or if you'd like to watch the video where these rules were announced, I'll throw all that into the description box below this video. And all I ask in return is that you take a quick second to post your home address into the comments section below this video. Just kidding, that would be a very weird thing to ask, wouldn't it? Although, what I do ask is that you smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Now lastly, since you've completed this episode of Facts Matter, I would highly recommend that you go on over to Epoch TV and check out an awesome episode of Kash's Corner, where Kash Patel sat down with Rick Grinnell, who was the former acting director of national intelligence under President Trump, and they discussed Russia, NATO, as well as how to build peace in Eastern Europe. Here's a trailer for that episode.
Intelligence officials are leaking untested, unverified, ultimately untrue, classified information. I actually went to Chancellor Merkel. No one knows this. I've never said this publicly. Can you help us on Pastor Brunson? Can you pressure the Turk? The whole Russia narrative is exactly what Beijing wants you to do. Russia is a problem. China is a crisis. It was an aggressive form, stage 3.5. I immediately had to really go to the core of who I was and figure out how do you beat cancer and how do you stay really connected.
How'd you do that?
You forgot one of my titles.
What? You have so many titles, I can't keep up with them.
That's my favorite, though.
If you want to check out that full episode, as well as all the other awesome content over on Epoch TV, I'll throw a link to it. It'll be right there at the very top of the description box. I hope you click on it. I hope you check it out. I hope you subscribe. And I hope that you join us on this journey of exploring this beautiful, beautiful world through honest journalism that is based in truth and tradition. Now, lastly, if you haven't already, smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't already, in order to get this type of honest news content delivered directly into your YouTube feed while YouTube still allows it. Also, consider hitting that notification bell so you can actually be notified of any new videos as we release them. And then lastly, if you have an Instagram account, consider following me at Epoch Times Roman. I publish behind-the-scenes videos as well as spicy memes. And then, until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed and stay free.